Hi, I haven't recorded anything for YouTube in a long time. Today, just going to do a little card that you can send to a friend and it would be very appreciated. I have a little pad of paper that's 10 by 7, and so I'm going to show you here. I just measure and score the paper. I don't cut it in half, but I score it and fold it so that it is like a card. You can buy Christmas card stock anywhere, like at any craft store or anything like that. So I just mark it and then I score it with the back of an X-Acto knife. I don't want to cut right through it. I just want to make like an indent so that it's easy to fold. So I score it. Once is usually enough, and then I fold it over and comes out like this, and then it's going to be ready to paint on. So what I'm planning to do, like this paper is not the greatest. It's just a little pad of paper that I've been using to do like little watercolors, when I'm outside. So it's not heavy paper. It's very light. So then the first thing I do after I've scored it and folded it is um, I draw the snow. So I don't draw the so I draw the snow in the shape of a tree. So hopefully this is very difficult to see because um, of my camera work, which is not the greatest. So, but what I'm drawing is I'm drawing clumps of snow sitting on branches. If you have this off full screen, it might show a little bit better. So what you want is you want to just draw where the snow is going to be, and then also I'm drawing in a trunk, so sort of in the middle at the bottom. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some paint, and I'm going to paint the shadows in the snow. So what I'm going to do is mix up some very light, a light watery mixture of, this time I think after I wet my palette, I'm going to pick up some cobalt, not ultramarine, but cobalt, because it's a lighter blue, and a little tiny bit of burnt sienna, because the burnt sienna will tone the blue down, so it's not a really bright blue. It's a kind of a grayish color. And then once I do that, I'm going to first thing like the first thing I do is to paint with water. So here I've mixed the paint and I'm going to apply it, but then my next step is to realize that I should do the whole thing at once. So I'm going to paint with water in all of the snow shapes. So not anywhere else, but just where the snow is, I'm going to paint water. And then once I do paint all the water, then I'm going to come in at the bottom of the snow shape and bring in the light shadow. So right here, I'm going to bring in the snow shadow underneath. So just paint the water where the snow shape is. So if you're just making it wet so that when you bring in the very light gray, blue-gray paint, it will, and you touch it just at the bottom, the water will pull it up in a soft shape into the snow. So that's what you're really looking for. You're just looking for a soft shadow in the snow underneath. Then once we do that, the next step is going to be to mix up some paint, which I'm using Prussian blue and burnt sienna. So Prussian blue and burnt sienna make a dark green. So I'm mixing up the green. So as you can see, I don't have to wait long in between anything on this painting because the water is so, the paint is the paper is so thin, and it doesn't hold the water for very long, so you have to work sort of quickly. So now what I have is I have the Prussian blue, burnt sienna, making a dark green, and I'm touching the bottom of the where it's wet with the gray to just make small marks that represent the tips of branches that are showing. And I try to do that everywhere in a kind of a loose pattern, but not too regular. You want it to be irregular, as in nature. So where you touch the snow, so where you touch the paper, the paint will be a bit darker and more defined. And where you touch the water, it will also go into that soft snow shape. So what you do is you do the whole thing. So you're capturing that lovely tree that's outside that just got hit by all that snow, and it's just got big clumps of snow all over the branch. So here I think what I do is I mix up, I'm mixing up some paint here for the trunk. So just burnt sienna with a little bit of, maybe a little bit of cobalt or ultramarine in it, not much. And then just painting the trunk. This is not a serious tree painting, it's just a little representation. And so I painted on one side, then I'm just going to add water and pull it out. Just stretch the paint out a little bit to the other side. So then the next thing is going to be to paint the sky. So what I'm going to do that, I think here what I'm doing is I'm adding a few more little dark shapes for the tree branches. Just a bit, not much. The next step will be to paint the sky. So I tried this a few different ways, and I tried to make the sky darker, but it doesn't work very well with this, with the salt, which is the primary kind of tool in this. So the water, I just paint with water all around the snow. So don't paint over the snow, just paint around the snow with water. And then you want a very light mixture, so you can't really see my palette there, but what I'm mixing is I'm mixing a light mixture of cobalt and burnt sienna just to make that same gray tone that was in the snow clumps. So we're making that for the sky. And so we're just going to make it kind of wet, so not real thick. Kind of wet, and then we're just going to slap it around in there to make the sky with the water. See, it's very, very loose. Don't try to paint it even. Don't try to, make a like a graded wash or anything. Just slap the paint in really loose. And then try not to paint over top of where you've drawn your snow shapes. So what you want is just to make it nice and loose all around, and then just what we're going to do is we're going to use salt, which you've probably seen other artists use before. It makes lovely snow. So I'm just going to do this, and then, yep. And then liberally. Now, with a normal watercolor on normal watercolor paper, you would not put the salt on yet. You would wait, because you would wait for that certain kind of magical point where the salt will work. But I've tried this several times, and on this very thin paper, it's just from a pad of paper, the salt needs to be put on right away. So as you can see now, the salt is starting to work and it's starting to pull. So what the salt does is it pulls the water. It's salt um, it draws water. And when it's drawing the water, it's also drawing little bits of paint. So what it's doing is it's creating white spots. So where the salt, when the paper dries and the salt is dry, everything's dry, then those salt crystals will be dark. They will be blue. They will have pulled the paint from around where they were sitting on the paper and the paint, and then that makes those little white spots on the paper, which is a kind of a lovely thing. So here, what I'm doing is I'm just adding some paint in between the branches, and then I'm just going to throw a little bit more salt on that. So then the next thing is waiting and waiting and leaving it. So you don't use a hairdryer on this. You just wait and leave it and let it sit until the salt does its work. And then when the salt is finished, that might take 10-15 minutes. And so I've kind of cut the video short here, but it's about 10 or 15 minutes. And then what you do is you will take the salt off. You might want to use a hairdryer at this time to be sure that it's dry. I did not do that, and I have, as you can see, a kind of a whitish spot on the top right there. So there, now you have your lovely card that you can give to someone special. Happy painting.